run from it. Destiny arrives all the same. The sun setting on the Alliant Energy Center here in Madison, Wisconsin, and the sun setting on the 2019 Reebok CrossFit Games as 4 days of competition have come to a close. Thanks for staying with us throughout the day and throughout these last 4 days here on the Rogue Iron Game. Packed house now here back at the desk, the entire team. I'm Sean Woodland with Andy Sakamoto, Dan Bailey, and Chase Ingraham. It was a different format. It was certainly a different experience, I think, for a lot of people and athletes, but there was no assortment of excitement here.
Yeah, I think this whole season has had a lot of us wondering, what it's going to look like, and especially the games. This weekend had no shortage of entertainment, of ups and downs, and leaderboard switch-ups, and names that we didn't think were going to be where they were. Really exciting, totally thrilling weekend.
I have to say, as a former athlete at the CrossFit Games and now getting the chance to do some commentating, this was almost just as stressful watching it all unfold as participating in the games itself. Outside of that, with all the changes in the season and the point scores and the cuts, we can talk about that until we're blue in the face. Tia-Clair Toomey and Mat Fraser still on top. Super impressed to see that at the end of the day on Sunday.
And that's a great point by Dan. I mean, the programming is fantastic. The events were fun to watch. I was just as stressed out as anything. To see it come down on the men's side to the final last 5 reps of a barbell. When you talk about entertainment, we got some entertainment. But like you said, Matt, Tia, Mayhem, CrossFit Games.
Yeah.
What more do you want to say?
There is a whole lot of hardware going back to Tennessee here in the coming days. And they need a much bigger trophy case down there at CrossFit Mayhem. And speaking of CrossFit Mayhem, let's start with the team competition. And we have said all week that coming into this is going to be the toughest competition ever, and it was going to be tight, and anybody could win it. And we could not have been more wrong, because Rich Hornig and Mayhem Freedom just destroyed the best competition that we have seen here on the team side of things.
And here's the thing that stands out. They have the athletes. They clearly have the chemistry, a level above everybody else on the playing field. And they have, obviously, the training grounds to produce the greatest team we've ever seen in CrossFit Games history. Like you mentioned, all of that hardware going back down there. Right now, they're unstoppable. They mentioned Dre leaving, so it'll open up the question, who's coming in to fill his position? Can they repeat again or come back again and win another CrossFit Games championship?
You talked about it. Okay, you can have super teams, you can have talent. That ain't gonna be enough.
Well, it's not just super teams. You had teams filled with CrossFit Games individual competitors that got embarrassed on the field here at the CrossFit Games. And Dan was saying, it's like, they have the athletes, they have the prep. They also have probably a full inbox because Dre Strom is leaving. So
Resumes
I just think I need to type mine in. It's like, hey, what a good has-been to not make your team any better. But what they did, they could probably win with me on your team. That's what I'm going to say. That's how good everybody else is.
I'm just going to make a suggestion for somebody. I won't mention his name, but his initials are Dan Bailey. So, the opening's there, Dan.
I'll think about it.
All right, so you're saying there's a chance. Meanwhile, CrossFit Krypton, they were put together sort of late here in the season, but they found a way to gel, and they finished second and had some very impressive performances throughout the last 4 days.
Right, they did, and this is a team of highly talented individual athletes. They're all games individual competitors. But as you said, Sean, they had competed, 3 of them had competed at some sanctionals, but they had a late addition of Camille LeBlanc-Bazinet, and you just never know as a team how you're going to perform with that many talented individuals. They got an event win on the sprint relay. Yeah, they had a little hiccup on the big chipper, but overall they held themselves together with great composure and with a very talented field of competitors that they were up against. So nod to Krypton.
And give credit to Invictus. They finished on the podium in 3rd place. They had the battle to get there, and look, with who knows, if they go back to the drawing board, figure things out, maybe they find themselves pushing the Mayhem teams for the overall lead.
Right.
I mean, they put them together at the beginning of the season, too. I mean, what they did coming in, it was funny is that they were the first team to qualify for the CrossFit Games out of Dubai, in which it was heralded as a team programming that only favored individuals. Well, they proved themselves as a team as well here at the CrossFit Games.
Let's go to the women's side of the competition, where we saw history made by Tia Toomey, the first woman to win 3 CrossFit Games championships. Kristin Holte, she winds up on the podium for the first time in her career. And Jamie Green has been on the podium as a member of a team. Now she stands there as an individual, and Catherine Davidsdottir wasn't able to hold on to 3rd place. She drops to 4th. Carrie Pierce rounding out the top 5. But to see the way that Tia Toomey competes, and then the way that she carries herself afterwards, and that she speaks of her competition, I mean, that is a class act, and I think a champion that the entire CrossFit community can be proud of.
Yeah, I mean, she was so dominant all weekend. She only had 2 finishes outside of 4th place, and those were 12th place finishes. Those are not bad finishes. She had a handful of event wins, which ties her with Sam Briggs with 11 event wins, which is the 4th best of all time. But here's what I'm most impressed with, and you touched on it, Sean, which is it's not her physical game, it's that her mental game has finally caught up to her physical game. And on a weekend where she was faced with a lot of unknowns, looming cuts, she handled herself with such composure. There were so many events that she was so far ahead of these other ladies. I can only imagine that we have not even seen the full potential of Tia-Clair Toomey.
That is the scary thing, that she keeps getting better, and you wonder now, have we seen the ceiling with her? And I mean, it's hard to say that we have, because she just continues to get so much better. We spent a lot of time talking about Kristin Holte. We had to make up for lost time. But let's give her her due. One of the most consistent athletes we have seen, 7th overall the last 2 years, first time on the podium from her, and just an outstanding performance for the last 4 days.
Yeah, you got to feel so good about Kristin Holte, not only just getting on the podium, but taking a 2nd place finish. Consistency is key in what we talk about in CrossFit. How good are you across a broad and very wide and deep amount of work? And her hard work has finally paid off. No finishes today outside of the top 6. Well-deserved 2nd place finish. Like we said before, we can't say enough about how good she's been over the past couple years. She's a very quiet champion, a very quiet, reserved person, but goes out on the field and competes with the heart of a lion with all those other girls. Just hats off to you, Kristin. We're super happy for you.
Yeah. Didn't end up the way that Catherine Davidsdottir wanted, but give her credit, because like we were talking about during the broadcast of the event, she was left for dead basically going into the sprint, found a way to get into the top 10, and almost wound up on the podium.
I'll give Jamie Green credit right off the bat. She took 3rd from Katrin, but what Katrin did to start off the Coliseum events by blasting through events 10 and 11 to take 2 back-to-back 1st place finishes when we thought she was floundering out after the swim, gets herself into 3rd place position, but it's this muscle up when she's trying to go through that herder, that last rep in the first set of 5, when you know what that's supposed to feel like, and you guys have all been there, is that was the rep. I couldn't even heard you guys behind me. It's like you knew that was kind of the beginning of the end of that event for Katrin. It was sad to see because she came out so aggressive early on, but I think that ended up hurting her in the final event.
Other than Tia just being an incredible champion, what are the main things you're going to take away from this women's competition?
Honestly, one of the things that I'm looking at isn't so much of the women that we see on the leaderboard, it's the women that we don't see on the leaderboard, and what is their mental capacity and attitude heading into the next season.
Well, and one of those ladies has got to be Haley Adams, right? 18 years old. What a phenomenal weekend she had. And all those other ladies have got to be worried about the potential of Haley Adams at this point.
I'm actually going to go below the top 10, and what are the 11 through 20, the past champs, the big names that we lost coming into the weekend? How are they going to respond in the next season if it does end up being the same way? I'm very curious to see how they approach next year's season.
I think there are a lot of athletes right now who are checking out real estate prices in Cookeville, Tennessee. So
wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah, if you're a realtor there, you're about to get a lot of business. Let's go now to the men's final standings, as Mat Fraser joins Rich Froning as now the only 2 men to ever win 4 CrossFit Games championships. Noah Olson put up a heck of a fight. He finishes in 2nd, first time he's on the podium in his career. Bjorgvin Gudmundsson back on the podium, and you just got to feel for Scott Panchik, who try as he may, just can't seem to crack the top 3. What stands out to you now when you take a look at those final standings?
Again, I mean, it's heartbreaking for me to see Panchik kind of outside of that top. He's one of those guys he's like Kristin Holte. He's so consistent year after year, not only in the open, regionals, sanctionals, anything you throw at him, he's always one of those guys who's going to be at the CrossFit Games. You just assume it's going to happen. Then when he gets here, flashes of brilliance, great things happen for him, and then somehow by the end of the weekend, he's just a few points shy of reaching one of those podium spots.
Well, Chase, we just watched Mat Fraser do what Mat Fraser does. He had to fight for it this year.
Yeah.
And you said it yourself during the broadcast, maybe the most impressive win of his 4.
I know he probably didn't enjoy it as much while he was competing, but you look back at it and it's like he earned that this weekend more than he has in the past 3 most dominant finishes at the CrossFit Games previous to that. 6 event wins this weekend. That is the most individual event wins by any athlete ever at the CrossFit Games on the individual side. And what he had to do to put himself in that position, it was a tough weekend, but he's got to be the most proud, tying 4 in a row with Rich Froning. That's pretty darn good company when you talk about the best ever.
And meanwhile, you got to be happy for a guy like Noah Olson, who has gotten close, and now he finally gets himself on the podium in 2nd place. Just an outstanding performance from him.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got to keep his head high after the body work that he did this weekend. I think back to 2015, competing with Noah a few times. He's always had some major blunder happen that just took him off of podium contention. I remember he dumped a wheelbarrow full of sandbags at one point. This weekend, he was incredibly consistent. He fought for it. He showed up. In that last event, he traded places back and forth with Mat Fraser, who is arguably the best CrossFitter or CrossFit Games athlete that we've ever seen. So nothing to be disappointed about at all. I can't wait to see him come back next season if he's hungry to try to grab that top spot. When
Bjorgvin Gudmundsson first wound up in the podium a few years back, he was like Tia Toomey. We kind of just didn't see him coming, and he just stayed there and stayed there and stayed there. Oh, he's on the podium. Kind of the same story here.
Right. Well, and since then, he hasn't been able to get himself back on the podium. He's had all finishes for the last 3 years, 2016, 2017, 2018, within the top 10. But he hasn't been able to get himself back on top of that podium. But this weekend, he only had 3 event finishes outside of the top 10. So much to like what you were saying about Kristin Holte, he was just super consistent across all of the events. And there it was, it landed him back on top of the podium in 2019.
Anytime we wrap up the CrossFit Games, there are just so many moments that you think back about that you made a huge impact, or big moments in the Coliseum, or maybe out on the field. What are the moments that are going to stand out to you when you think back here now at the 2019 Reebok CrossFit Games?
Honestly, for me, the weekend's a blur. Like, it was outstanding. I think from start to finish, we've never had so much, I don't know if you could say controversy, so many things to kind of focus on up and down the leaderboard. We weren't always looking at the top, we were looking at the middle, we were looking at the bottom, where were athletes going to finish. So, I mean, overall, just one of the most exciting CrossFit Games I think we've ever seen.
Yeah.
And to your point, it's drama from start to finish, from beginning to end. We're talking from December, figuring out what these sanctioned events are going to look like, how the Open turned out with national champions, and then you get to the games, and now you have cuts. And in the end, we got entertainment. It was fun to watch for me. And for us, it's like, I just love to see what this means moving forward for the CrossFit Games.
Well, and for me, there is one consistent in all of the CrossFit Games, but it never ceases to amaze me, and that is the hard work of all the people that are here, all the volunteers, the people that athlete control, the hardworking crew at Rogue. There's countless behind-the-scenes hours that go unnoticed for all the people on the other side of the screen, but as an athlete, as somebody who has worked at the Games, I cannot tell you the immense amount of work that these people put into this event year after year after year.
It does not happen without all the volunteers, without all the equipment crew, without all the hardworking crew here at Rogue, who they're here before we are, and they leave way after we do, and they have busted their butts for the last 4 days to put on this event. I want to ask you about what you said. What does this mean now moving forward? How do athletes have to not only change their preparation, but also their mindsets as they move through the season and towards the CrossFit Games?
I think you got to set the schedule now. You got to look at what's coming. We have the Open coming back in October, and then the sanctioned event season happens. And we have nearly 30 sanctioned events coming into next season. The only thing we don't know is what the CrossFit Games are going to look like landscape-wise in 2020. More experience is going to yield to better results, I believe, at the end. And with different events all lined up throughout the season. Make sure you set your schedule early with your coach and look at your season and see how it shakes out for you moving forward into 2020.
And on that note, that is going to do it for us here at the 2019 Reebok CrossFit Games. I want to thank everybody on our crew who has worked so incredibly hard to bring this production to you. All the guys behind the camera here, our stage manager KJ, she's been fantastic. Everybody in the truck, I wish I knew all your names or could remember all your names right now. I'd spout them out if I could, but Charlie Doobie, our producer, has been fantastic. But everybody in the truck who's worked really hard to bring this top-notch production to you. Katie Henniger for giving us the opportunity to do it. Justin Reed, our director. Just everybody, if you're involved in this, thank you so much for everything that you have done, and thank you to the road crew. Thank you to you for watching. That's all. We're done with the 2019 Reebok CrossFit Games. For Chase Ingraham, Dan Bailey, Annie Sakamoto, I'm Sean Woodland. Thank you for joining us here in Madison, Wisconsin, and we will see you soon here on the Rogue Iron Games.